Hello Year 9, Mr. Mitchell here, and welcome to another geography lesson. So we're going to start off today's lesson by having a look at this scenario here. So imagine you are driving a car down a country road. If the road looks like this, so you've got a very sharp bend here, where do you reckon the car is most likely to crash? So the car is going to be traveling in this direction, as you can see by the arrow. Where do you reckon it's most likely to crash? Is it A, B, C, or D? So it's unlikely to crash at A because it's a straight piece of road, and even Mr. Mitchell would struggle to crash a car on a straight piece of road, although I'm not saying I couldn't. It's unlikely to be B because there isn't much of a bend there. Again, I think even I could get around that bend. It's likely to be C or D. And if you chose C, well done, because you are absolutely bang on. It is most likely to crash on the outside of this bend because the momentum of the car will carry it round. Most likely, they're going to understeer and they're going to go straight into corner C. Then very unlikely to go into the inside of the bend, D. So why are we looking at this? Well, it is relevant for today's lesson because we are going to be having a look at something called a meander. We're also going to have a look at something else called an oxbow lake. So without further ado, let's get our title down. So as I said, today's lesson, we are going to look at meanders and oxbow lakes. And the objective of today, by the end of this lesson, is to be able to understand how both of these features form. And very important to note, they are both features of the middle course of the river. So last week we looked at the upper course. This week we're going to look at the middle course. So on we go. The first thing that we're going to look at is a meander, which is a fancy word for a bend in the river. And in this picture here, you can see a typical example of one. So when we're looking at our picture earlier of where the car is most likely to crash, we were looking at the outside of the bend. And if you look here, these blue arrows going along here and here are the flow of the water. And you can see they're thickest going in this direction, so on the outside of the river. That is where the force of the water is strongest. So it's the deepest part of the river. It's got the most amount of energy. It's got the most amount of flow. And actually, the fancy term for the strongest flow in the river is actually thalweg. Bit of a strange word, but something that's good to know. So, doesn't really need a far stretch of the imagination to understand that on this outside of the bend, because it's got so much energy, this is where erosion is going to take place. And you can see in this picture here that the bank is slowly being worn away. So you've got the start of a river cliff there. You can see that the river bank is going to be eroded in this place. If you look at the other side of the river though, on this side, on the inside of the bend, you'll see that actually the opposite is happening. There's very little flow, the river's very shallow, and actually deposition is taking place. So the river's actually depositing its load in this area here. And if you go to a river near you and you look at a bend in the river, this is true for all meanders. Erosion takes place on the outside where the current is strongest. Deposition takes place on the inside of the bend. And if during this really hot weather you've ever sort of waded into a river, you will notice that the outside of the bend is always deepest. This is an example of an aerial view of some meanders. So you can see lots of meanders. There's one here going around there. There's one here going around there. And you can actually see, if you look on the inside of this bend here, you can see where the river's actually deposited loads and loads of sediment. And it's actually starting to build up there. You can actually see some other features as well on this picture. If you look here, for example, on the outside of these bends, this is where erosion is going to take place at its strongest. Now, what happens when the river erodes so much that they actually end up meeting. The two bends here actually end up meeting. Well, you end up with something called an oxbow lake. If you look over here on the video, you will notice there's a kind of section of the river that's been completely cut off. And that is where two bends have met together because of erosion, and actually they've cut off a loop of the river. And you get left behind with an oxbow lake. And the water just sits there for quite a long time, and eventually it will dry up. And as you can see here, very faintly, you can see there used to be a part of the river there, but actually it's been cut off. It was an oxbow lake and it's now dried up. We call those meander scars. It was part of the river, but it's now dried up. And actually, if you see in the picture, there's quite a lot of this river course that has actually dried up. In fact, all of this area here used to be part of the river, but it's now dried up. We're going to have a look at a quick video now, which will explain the meanders in a little bit more detail, as well as the Oxbow Lake. So off we go.
As a river approaches the end of its journey towards its mouth, it usually flows over flatter land. It develops increasingly large bends, called meanders. Meanders constantly change their shape and position, sometimes creating steep cliffs, like these in the Mosel Valley, over a period of thousands and thousands of years. The water scours the banks and the river bottom. The faster it flows, the more material it carries. The speed of the water varies in different parts of the river channel. Fast-flowing water in this river is carrying mud, shingle and debris. Where there is a bend in the river, it wears the outside bank away. Little by little, the water undercuts the bank. The slowest flowing part of the river is on the inside of the bend, where the friction is highest. And this is where it deposits its load of mud and shingle, forming a bank. Over the years, it extends further and further into the river. Meanwhile, on the outside of the bend, the water continues to cut into the bank. The result is that the river bends more and more, meandering across the land. Some of the world's most impressive meanders are in the Luangwa Valley, Zambia. And here, an even more dramatic feature, an oxbow lake, can result. The neck of the meander gets narrower and narrower, until, at a time of flood, the river cuts through the neck and shortens its course. The original meander gets blocked off by further deposits of material, to leave a crescent-shaped oxbow lake. This meander became an oxbow lake, and within a few years it had dried up.
Now that we've seen the video, we need to have a go at describing how an oxbow lake forms in our notes. So you've got these pictures in the Word or PDF document attached to this assignment. And what I would recommend you do is you try and label the 4 steps for the formation of an oxbow lake. So I'll give you some keywords to help you out, and I will just really quickly talk through that formation again. So step 1, we know we've got the river here. We've got the thalweg, which is the strongest part of the river flow. And obviously it's flowing strongest on the outside of the bend. So that is where erosion is going to take place. Deposition is going to take place on the inside of the bend. And obviously here and here are 2 points where the erosion is taking place, and they're quite close to each other. And that is where our oxbow lake is going to start to form. So in the second picture, you can see same things are happening. Erosion here, 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 deposition here, And those two bends in the river are starting to get closer to each other because of erosion. In step number 3, those 2 points have actually met, and we now have an Oxbow Lake formed, but it's still connected to the river. And actually you can see here there is no flow in this part of the river now. It's actually been cut off, and you can see here the river, the Thalweg, the strongest flow, is now in this main part of the river. So this part up here, the Oxbow Lake, is pretty much cut off. And in step 4, this whole section of the river, this Oxbow Lake, is now cut off. So it is now literally a lake. It hasn't got any flow in it at all. And over time, the water will slowly drain away. Plants will grow up inside it. And after about 10, 15, 20 years, the only way that you'll know it was there was from a meander scar, which is basically where the ground is a slightly different colour. So that is an Oxbow Lake. You've got some keywords up here to help you out, and what I would do is do a step-by-step labelling of each of those 4 pictures. Try and use those keywords there, and that will be good. Okay, so final task for today. On your Word or PDF sheet, you will see that at the bottom you've got a little table like this, which is our key definitions. So these are basically all the words that we've used in the video so far today. All you need to do is to write the definitions in the box on the table. You could also draw a little picture if you want to. That could be quite useful, but so long as you've got a definition, that will be absolutely fine. So hopefully you'll be able to remember them. If not, you might have to do a bit of Googling, but I reckon most of you will be able to remember these keywords and write in exactly what they mean. So you can either draw out the table, or you can do it on the Word document or the PDF document, whichever is easiest. And that is it. So as usual, please can you send your work to me on Microsoft Teams? I don't want to have to chase loads of you this week. Can you make sure that you try and submit it by the end of the week at the latest? Any problems, drop me an email or drop me a message on Teams and I will try and help you out. But in the meantime, I hope you have a really good week, and I will see you next week for another video. Good luck, stay safe, over and out.